So what we'll cover in this session is we're going to actually give you to walk through a quick founder-led playbook and signs of when you're actually ready to hire, do that first sales hire, common mistakes and some tips for founders as they're in this founder-led growth stage and learnings from the market. To start it off, I want to just introduce myself. Again, I'm Jean Templin. I am the CEO and founder of Nayak. And Nayak is a sales technology, and it really helps the teams adjust conversations in real time to what the buyers are really looking for. And for the last 2 years, I've been really obsessed with AI and humans and how that interaction happens, that interaction point, what we can do as and how we can use AI to make us humans better. And one of the things that I've been deeply studying is relationships and how we communicate and how we can use AI to kind of remove this cognitive load. And really, where is that really important? Where I've been focusing all of my efforts and all of my studies has been around sales and really understanding and talking to hundreds of sales people, founders, sales reps, sales managers, sales gurus, really understanding what does it mean to have a sales conversation? What does good look like, right? Along with understanding the psychology behind it. And we spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time talking to psychologists and understanding what motivates us, right? How do we as people really have good conversations? How do we build relationships? How do we earn the other person's trust? And, we've talked with great people like Dr. Emily Bechetis from NYU, who really focuses in on how do you motivate people? How do you influence people? And, Dr. Jack Mayer, who actually coined the term emotional intelligence, which you'd sometimes hear called EQ. And this is how are you actually using emotions, your emotions, and reading other people's emotions to understand what's going on in a call and adjusting things as they go. And what's really interesting of all this, it is not just what people say. It is the way that their bodies move. It is the way that the expressions on their face. And as you're having a call in sales, really a very high, what I would call, it's a high stress call, or it's a call that has a lot of cognitive load put into it. You're really trying to get revenue. These are where all these signals sometimes are read or misread. And what it really says is, as you start to study all of this, it's really hard, right? Sales is hard. It is hard. And it's not only hard in person. Now put it into a little box that we're all in. How are you, as a salesperson, able to read these signals that the seller or the buyer is actually showing? So it's so hard that even the people who do it well, 40%, only 40% of them are actually meeting their quota. And the rest of them are actually still struggling. And before I became a salesperson, before the 2 years before I started to actually study all this, I was a product person. So much like many of you on this call, and I don't know how many people were product people or salespeople, but I was a product person, right? And I am now doing founder-led sales. And my first sales conversations, I practiced, you did role plays, you did all these things, but when you got on the call, it felt really different because of all this cognitive, and I froze, right? So I understand exactly what founder-led sales means. And what I'm giving to you today is a framework for founders to be successful, what we have seen and have talked to all these experts in the industry. So some of the challenge and some of the things that we're seeing happening in the industry as a whole right now is, everyone can build. With Gen AI, vibe coding, pretty much everyone can build. It's getting really, really easy to build, but it still feels really hard to sell. And more of us are doing this founder-led sales who are not salespeople. In fact, 80% of these are saying that they're not salespeople, right? And so what I'm trying to say to you guys, you're not alone. There's a lot of us out here are struggling or trying to figure out how to do founder-led sales. And the industry, it's shifting, right? It's shifting. It's shifting from fund, build, sell to day one selling. we're looked to be experts at the problem. We have to sell earlier because selling hasn't gotten shorter, only building has. So this day one selling concept and really going out and pitching your concepts and your and what you want to sell on day one to actual customers is kind of the new thing you're seeing happening. And as I said already, VCs really want you to be experts in the problem because the technology right now is a lot easier to build. So that brings us to founder-led sales. We have to prove to the market, to the VCs, to everyone that our product is sellable. And we are experts in our product. We know everything about our product from the forward to backwards. We are most passionate about it. And one of the things that really, really stands out to me is buyers love to talk to founders. I didn't quite understand this when I started it all. And I started to talk to other people. And recently I was just in a VC founder dinner in the Bay. And one of the person works with Fortune 500 companies. He's like, they love to talk to founders. Why? They understand we are building the most innovative tech out there right now, right? It's not coming from these established same old stuff. It's really we are building that new innovation level and they want to talk to us and learn from us. So lean into that as founders. So how long are you going to be doing founder-led sales? Right now, it's ranging between the first million to the second million, right? So right around there is some of the key signals to say, hey, I can actually hire my first person. And one of the big mistakes that founders do is they outsource all this functionality a little bit too early. But you don't really understand who you're selling to yet when you're just starting. That's why it's so important that you as founders stay in that seat listening and learning about who is going to buy your product. So we're going to talk about the simple founder-led playbook. It has three components to it. We're going to talk about finding your ICP, and we're going to give you the structure, a quick start structure to actually get started, and then a structure of how do you improve, right? Like anything else, whether you're in product, and again, I'll associate back to product, is that you have a structure even when you do a sprint, right? You're trying to build software based off of use cases, and you have a structure that you go through, and then you have a way to improve things. It's very, very similar to sales. There's nothing different here. We're trying to understand who we're talking to and building a structure and improving. And our goal is not to become the best salesperson ever. Our goal is to become a good salesperson. And we're going to put the structure in place to do that. So first, let's talk about your ICP, right? And I'm just going to say it's the ICP is called Ideal Customer Profile. And recently, I was pitching to one investor, and I said the word ICP, and they didn't even know it. And I was kind of shocked that they didn't even know what that meant. So I wanted to make sure everybody here understands ICP means Ideal Customer Profile. And it is a hypothesis of who's going to buy your product. You kind of write it down and say, it's going to be this kind of person, right? And they're going to be solving the problem with my solution that I'm set. And why are they going to pick us? And why is it a problem now, right? So you write it down and then you say, okay, this is the person who's going to buy my product. And then you say, how do I go out and find these people? And we use things like lots of data points to find this, like firmographics, tech stack they use, titles, and pain points. So what comes out of this is you'll say, my ICP is, founders. They are doing B2B sales. They use Notion and HubSpot. The people I talk to, their titles are typically founders and CEOs, and they want to learn how to do founder-led sales. That would be an ICP. Now, remember, this is a hypothesis. So you have to go out and validate it. And to validate it, what do we have to do? We have to talk to people, right? We have to actually get and talk to people to understand if our hypothesis is right. And how long do we need to do this? We need to do it really for they say about the first million, because you're really listening when you're out in market talking to understand if this hypothesis is accurate. Now let's talk about the structure, right? The structure to actually communicate. There's two things we're going to go through. First is what I'll call the sales process, and the second is the meeting process. So let's start with the sales process. It goes through free. We say do a quick start one. We don't like to, the best founders really start with very, very simple processes. You can always make them more complicated, but start with a three-phase process: discovery, solution, and proposal, right? And the idea here is you need to go through these processes, but the real thing is how do you know when you're done with that phase, right? How do you understand when you're done? And the definition of done is in discovery, you mutually qualify. Your buyer and you say, this is the solution this solution fits my problem. Then you present out the solution and you're selected. That is when you move to the next phase. Then you generate a proposal and you get it through procurement. So these are the exit criteria to go into a process. Very similar. And I'm going to bring it back again to product that I did all my life is when I'm trying to close a user story, I have an acceptance criteria, and when it's met, we close it and we move to the next. Very, very similar idea here. And I'm going to double click down into discovery, where you mutually qualify, because this is really, really important for founders to really understand how to do this. As I said, the discovery call is the most important stage when you're doing founder-led sales because here you're really getting to understand the pain. We say you want a structured call. Structured calls are extremely important for the buyer because you're really showing them that you're prepared, that you understand what you're talking about. So in the structured call, we always have an opening, you know, welcome to the call, and we also have agreed next steps. But the meat of what you're gathering in the discovery calls, the items in blue here, 2 through 5, right? And they don't have to go in this order. This is just kind of the items that you have to cover because conversations are fluid, right? And they're not going to be scripted where you're going to say this and then this and then this because conversations with two people just don't work that way. But you really want to understand their current state. What is going on today, right? How are you solving this today? What pain are you feeling? What's not working? And you don't want surface level answers to this. You want to dig in and lean really deep. And then you also want to quantify the pain. Ask them things like, what is this impacting? How much is getting lost or saved if we solve this for you? Also, a very important question to understand how this pain is important to that to the buyer on the other side of the call. Priority. We're founders, we have many priorities, right? So understand from your buyer where this is on their priority list. Is it a top priority they're trying to solve? Is it somewhere down here? So you can understand if this is something they're looking to do now or in the future. And who are the stakeholders, right? Any buying committee today, if you're selling B2B sales, there's usually 6 to 8 people who are in a committee to actually make that decision. And they're not all at the call. So you have to understand them. So when you do your solutions and you do your proposals, that you're actually talking to all of them. You want to understand and identify that here in this discovery call. And also, what is the process that you're going to go through, right, to actually get this approved? And do they have a budget? These are some very, very important questions to get asked. And then I always say, it's a rule for me. I actually talk about my solution and I don't demo it, right? And one of the persons, I do a series where I interview some of the best salespeople and I put it on a podcast called In the Call. And he's a very senior, he's been doing sales forever. And he says, I never demo anything on the first call. I'm here to build a relationship. I'm not here to do and show them what my tech does yet. And so this is why it's really important. If we do not get these stages right here, it impacts the other things. If we don't understand their true value, we cannot solution correctly. If we don't understand their true, we can also not propose correctly. So this is why we double down here as founders and really learn and listen in here. Also, we're also crisping our ICP, right? We're really understanding the things that our customers are looking for, the buyers that we're looking to attract. So some founder tips here of how we start these conversations out, right? Is, we don't have as founders all this muscle memory built yet. So we say sell to friendly, sell to your Rolodex, sell to your network first, like bring them through these conversations. Trust is there. They'll allow for some of the things that, when you go into more colder relationship building, that they'll help guide you and help you really understand and go through this process and build that muscle memory. The other thing is we really preach share and ask. Now, remember this, not show and tell. Show and tell is where you're just showing your technology, right? But you really need to almost ask the permission to do that. And you have to share and ask. And what I mean really by like that, this is more like an icebreaker. Think of it more like an icebreaker when you're in a networking event. How do you get somebody to open up and start to talk to you and build that trust, right? So a share could be something like, for me, it's like, hey, does your sales team sometimes not read or understand what the buyer's saying in the call? What do you think? And I might ask them stuff like, "What do you think about that?" or "How do you feel about that?" And that brings them into the conversation. And then the third one that I really want to say, objections are good. And if you think about this a little bit, as people are objecting to you, they're actually using their brain, the thinking through the solution that you're presenting and saying, how is this fitting into my world? How is this fitting into my company or my processes that I currently have? And I'll give you an example that recently happened. We're pitching out to or talking to a very big prospect we had. And they said, hey, does your product work when I'm at the customer and I'm in person? And I said, no, actually it doesn't. But, help me understand why. And they said, because we have a lot of this in our mix. And the AE on the call jumped in. He said, oh, but I can figure out how it will automatically work in a call, or we could do a workaround here. This means there's a lot of interest and a lot of intent actually being generated. They're listening, they're asking the questions. So these are good signals. The next is meeting structure. Now, some of you probably already do this, but I'd like to just highlight why this is extremely, extremely important for sales. Of the overall journey of a buying process that the buyer has, only 17% of their time is spent on talking with vendors, not just you, all vendors that they're talking to, right? So when you get them on a call, you have to make sure you're ready and you're prepared. So the meeting structure, preparing for a call, adjusting during the call, and documenting after the call is something you must do, absolutely must do in sales, right? Because not you are given a very small time slot and they picked you in their very busy schedule to have this meeting. And when you follow this process, the second meeting, you can pick up where you left off and continue down the process. So meeting structure is extremely important, and adjusting during the call is something that is very important for founders to double down on. Now I want to go into your feedback loop, or how do you improve as a founder? So that's kind of the structure you're going to put into place to communicate. So how do you improve? You base your performance on a standard of good, right? What does a standard of good look like for a sales call? It's, what does the buyer really want to hear when they're in a sales call? And this has been documented, and salespeople have been using this for a long time. You have to come and have a professional meeting. I'm sure, and if you have any of these, you can raise your hand. It's happened to me 1,000 times. You get on a call and you feel like your time is just wasted. Somebody didn't prepare. I have my name said wrong all the time because it's Jean. They'll call me Jean, and they think I'm a man, right? Like, and all these things, and it's just you feel as if your time is wasted. So you have to be able to manage a professional call. You have to be able to answer questions about your product. And as founders, we typically are the subject matter expert here. So we are really good at this. But when you get ready to hand this off to your first salesperson, they're not going to be as good as this as us. So we want that structure in place. And then we have to be able to read the room. We have to really listen for the signals and look for the signals, right? That the buyer says, I'm giving you signal. I don't want to talk about this. I want to go over here. Follow me, right? So that is really what the standard of good looks like. And as I said earlier, adjusting during the call, using new technology that's out there called real-time meeting intelligence for founders is extremely important. And this is where we always tell people to go, founders to go, and founders performing using these kind of tech are able to sell better, quicker, right? Because they're really listening to what the buyer wants and the way they want to be sold. And in here, it's really about building the strong conversations, and pulling data on the back. So if you think about meeting intelligence and what's really happening, all this data is coming off the back of calls. It's not just voice, and it's not just voice sentiment. It's not just what they said. It's also your facial expressions, it's your body language, and all these information can be used to help guide you and remove the cognitive load as you're building your muscle memory. For founders who use this say it's a game changer. And some things that you should be aware of as you start out your process, or maybe you're in your process and you're kind of going through it and you already hit some of these walls. These are the walls you're going to hit first, right? The things that we see always that founders are actually run up against. The professional meeting, right? Some people, they'll forget to make those next steps. They'll interrupt, they'll talk over. People want to be treated in a professional way as you're having this. Or for sometimes for me, I get I go down a rabbit hole and then I don't realize I'm there and half the meeting's gone and I didn't do any of the other things that I actually prepared and was ready for. Founders talk too much on calls, right? We're not because we're so excited and passionate about what we're doing. And the rule here really is 60-40 in these discovery calls at the beginning because you're learning, you want to learn, right? You should be only talking 60%. You should be listening 40%. And, it happens and there's tools out there to kind of help guide you through this. Feature dump is another one. When you start to feel uncomfortable, you'll start to just talk about your product. Again, the show and tell, what we were talking about earlier. And you start to say, it does this, it does this. And typically, what you'll see here is the person on the other call will be like, oh, this is really good. I love it. It's great. But you never solve their problem. And what happens? They ghost you, right? They're gone. They're no longer somebody that's interested in your product. And the last is really, really reading the buyer signals. And one of the ones that I think founders read wrong out of the gate is the short answers. When somebody's in a call and they're going, yes, no, that is indicating a lot that they don't have a lot of intent. Bring them into the conversation. Do that show, do that ask, show, give and ask, right? Give that back here, which is tell me more about it. How can I dig deeper into that so that you can bring them back into the conversation and make it so that you learn from them? With these three, finding your ICP, building a quick, the structure to communicate and a feedback loop, you're now a salesperson. You have everything you need to get started. Yay, you're a salesperson. So the signals, when you get to start to bring that first rep on, I know we talked about the $1 to $2 million revenue range. The other is you're going to have consistent wins, right? You're going to be winning consistently in a repeated pattern. You're going to see this. You're going to have this process that we just talked. You're going to have it written down and documented so you can hand it to somebody and tell them or teach them about this. And you are going to know your ICP. You're going to be the subject matter expert on that problem and who needs it.